There's no take two. There's no just a little more purple. Warts and all, you've downloaded the VO Radio Show.
When you step into something like this, which is credited and has enjoyed such great success, yes, you start to actually get associated with the program in a particular style. And you get known for that particular style, but that doesn't mean that you can't do other things as well.
That is Robert Lee on the VO Radio Show. He's going to be our special guest this week as we talk Mythbusters and his illustrious career as a voice talent. My name is Andrew Peters.
And my name is Robbo. That's no myth.
No, it's not. It's not a myth. Talking of myths, we should run through a few and see if we can dispel some myths.
Yeah, you've come up with a few voiceover ones, and I've come up with a few audio ones. So maybe we should swap.
The voice for the voices. This is the VO Radio Show.
Okay, well, there's one here that it says, as an actor, will voiceovers be an easy way to supplement my income?
So easy.
I think we can dispel that myth.
Yeah, I think
busted.
That's pretty much it. No, busted.
No, busted.
I don't think we even need the Mythbusters to prove that one. Yeah.
What have you got?
I've got, well, there's one. Let's start with a simple one. It says, room treatment is vital for quality sound.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Unless you think that you can make the world's greatest mix in a set of headphones, I don't think you can get away without room treatment.
And also recording, like as in the booth, has to be treated.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, certainly. I mean, once it's on tape or in the digital realm these days, it's pretty hard to get rid of it. There's some good noise reduction stuff out there, but nothing's perfect.
No, and that's a good tip for home studio voice talent who are just getting into building a home studio. That
absolutely
is key to get to control the noise in your booth.
Yeah, I would almost suggest cutting back on equipment and spending a bit more money on your acoustic treatment.
Well, that's not busted.
That's definitely not busted. Not busted at all.
All right, well, I've got one here.
Yeah.
Voice actors aren't real actors.
Ooh.
Ah.
Would you have told Robin Williams that he's not a real actor?
You wouldn't have done. No, not at all.
No.
So that is definitely busted.
Bing bong. Yeah, gone.
Yep.
All right, here's a good contentious one. This will get us a few emails, I reckon. A good preamp is more important than a good mic.
Ooh, well, that's kind of your neck of the woods, but if it was the other way around and you had a good microphone going into a really crappy preamp,
yeah,
what would that be like?
Probably pretty crappy.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, crappy gives crappy. So,
So I reckon you could probably almost get away with a half decent microphone. I'm not saying like an absolute piece of rubbish.
Yeah.
Going through a good preamp may actually work.
Yeah.
Jury's out on that one, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm probably leaning a bit more to the way you're leaning, but yeah, I think I'd debunk that one. I think I'd go, I think I'd say no. Bing bong.
Okay, you're going to go busted.
Yeah, I'm going to go busted, I think.
All right, well, how about this one then? If I, as a voice actor, if I get my big break, does that mean I have to audition less?
Yeah, because, since you've had your big break, you haven't had to go out and do anything to try and pick up new work, have you? It just keeps falling into your lap.
Absolutely. Just, they come knocking at the door. Yeah,
I was going to say, I know here in the studio too, now that, I've been doing this for 25 years and I've worked in a fair few places around town that, the work just falls into my lap.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll say busted.
Yeah, we'll say bing bong to that one too, I reckon.
Yep, okay. What's your next one?
High quality cables improve the sound.
Well, in the interview coming up next week with Harland Hogan, we discussed that very point. And with his microphone, which is not a $4,000 Neumann, he actually sells high quality microphone cables to go with that microphone to get the best from it.
Okay. I'm going to take this word for word here and say, does it improve the sound though? It may take a great sound from a great microphone and put it into your box, whatever you're using, whether it be a DigiDesign box or a whatever.
Yep.
Or does it just maintain that quality?
I see. That was a trick question. I would say it improve it. It can maintain. No. Well, it can actually show the microphone for what it is.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a step up from a dodgy cable.
I think on that one, we could safely say that a high-quality cable is certainly a good investment, let's be honest.
Yeah, so that one's not busted.
No.
Okay, and I've got one here. Hobby or career? If you perceive your voiceover career to be a hobby, do you believe that can be turned into a career?
I fell into the category where a few people said to me, I kind of like I really like your voice. Would you record this guide track for me, or would you do this, or would you do that? And thought, maybe I could make a bit of extra dough on the side doing voiceovers, but it certainly never proved to be the right thing to do. It's
like, well, I know a guy who's got amazing long fingers, but it doesn't mean he's a concert pianist.
Yeah, or a hand model. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to practice and learn the skill.
That's right. Yeah, agreed. All right, I've got one last one. And this one's probably a lay down misère, but it's a good one. You need better gear to make better recordings.
Well, if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. That was going to be exactly my point. I think you need better ears to make better recordings, I would suggest.
Yeah. And that actually is another one that we could just chuck in the end anyway. The best talent you'll ever work with are the ones that listen.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Yeah. The ones that can self-edit and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're not working from home and you're working from a studio, I like to watch the producer or the audio engineer, whoever's directing me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the words that come out of their mouth are not necessarily what they really want you to do, and you can actually get a visual cue of what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a world where only the best voice will do. Realtimecasting.com.
I got a funny story that you've just reminded me of with that one. Is a few years ago, you'd know of Kev Goolsbee.
Yep.
And for those of people who aren't familiar with him, Kev Goolsbee was the movie tone voice for many years. So back in the days when cinema was the only place you could go and, catch the news and all that sort of stuff, Kev Goolsbee was the man who did the voiceovers for that. And a couple of years ago, I was working in a studio with an advertising agency. The creative was a young guy. He was probably about 21 or 22, and he walked in proudly announcing that he'd found the perfect voice for this script, and that he discovered this voice. He was so proud of himself, and in walked Kev Goolsbee to do a commercial that was set up to be a movie tone news piece. And Kev was in the studio, and we were up to take 5 or 6, and this young guy was just going, "Nah, mate, it's just not right. It doesn't sound like this guy." I had to turn the talk back off, and I just turned around to the back of the room where he was sitting on the couch and said, "You do realise Kev was the movie tone voice?" And his face just turned red. And Kev had to turn around to the back wall because I'm sure he was smirking his head off. And I opened the mic back up, the talkback mic up again, and the kid went, "Actually, you know what? Maybe we should just do one more to fix up those couple of words at the end. That'll do."
Classic.
Yes, absolute classic. So there you go. It's probably got nothing to do with what we were talking about, but that story popped into my mind just as we were talking about that.
I think it's a beauty. Worth sharing. Now, talking about beauties, our little beauty today is Robert Lee, who is an English-Canadian Australian working on an American TV show, which is actually really an Australian production. The show, which is seen around the world, is called Mythbusters, and Robert Lee is the voice of Mythbusters. And this is what he sounds like when he's in the Mythbusters chair.
The voice for the voices. This is the VO Radio Show.
I'm listening now, apart from the buzz that I've got at my end. Yours sounds really quite good. And I'm going to guess now that I reckon you've got and I don't think it's a Sennheiser, I reckon you've got a Rode going in there.
Well, you're right, but which one?
It doesn't sound like it could be a shotgun, but I'm going to guess that it's not. I'm thinking it's like an NT1A or something.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. It's a small shotgun. Actually, it's not even a shotgun. It's an NT3, and
okay,
it's pretty darn good. I want the 416, of course, but
Well, I tell you, the NTG3, it'd be pretty hard pressed to pick it.
No, I reckon Christ, we've worked with them long enough, the 416s. But actually, the last couple of seasons of Mythbusters, actually, we've swapped over to use the 416 over the Neumann. And it's better, and I think it's okay, because, you use it more for, like a bit of mic technique you can use, for close up and pull back and, whatever.
Yeah.
I just find it a little more versatile to work with.
Well, it's basically bulletproof, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Now, we're wasting all the good gear. This could have been the interview. Hey, what's happening?
Well, you're getting it down, aren't you? You're recording.
Absolutely. Don't you worry about that.
Well, you can edit it all together.
I will. It'll be a big job.
So let's start at the end and work to the beginning.
Yes, thank you very much.
The VO Radio Show is produced in the studios of Voodoo Sound. Radio, TV, sound design. Find it all at voodoo-sound.com.
I don't know whether you remember, but we did actually work together back in the late 80s.
Yeah, remind me, because...
Triple M.
A Triple M, of course, yes.
I remember you in a suit. Now, whether you used to come in a suit and do voiceovers...
Yeah, I used to do that, yes.
Or that would have been it then.
Wow. A coat of many colors. It's like crazy, coming in and best dressed voiceover in town. No. Not anymore.
No, me either. But so that was how we first met. But I'm assuming there's a story that goes far beyond 1990. So what is your background?
Wow. Well, I had an Australian father and an English mother. I was born in England, raised in Canada, but came to Australia when I was 16 after my mother passed away. My father, who hadn't been here since after the Second World War, returned to Australia. And I came along, and within 3 or 4 months of me arriving, I was working at 2CH as an office boy or schedules clerk, whatever you want to call it. And that led me into radio. Which was just crazy. It had never occurred to me to do that, except, I was just asking at CES one day what he wanted to do. And I said, I don't know, read out a few. And he read out a few, and he read out radio notes. I said, yeah, radio notes. Yeah, sure. And, as luck would have it, I scored an interview at 2GB. Didn't get that job, but got the next one at 2CH. That's back in 1974. So going way back. And in 1975, I did my first on-air shift at 2JJ, July 1st, Canada Day, actually, as it turned out. So, I've been a radio guy from, going way back.
Wow, that's interesting, because I came here when I was 16 from England.
From England.
And got my first radio job, a bit after you, though, but in 1978.
Whereabouts?
3SH in Swan Hill.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I went bush too. I did my bush time too. Totally different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It is. I don't think anyone outside of Australia, and probably most of the people that are listening to this, wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about. But in Australia, your apprenticeship, if you want to be on air, is in the country, in some of these very, very small towns.
And if you wanted to get a better position, a better shift or something like that, you had to move radio stations, because there's no way that morning announcer that had been there for 40 years was going to actually resign anytime soon. Yep. So you had to look for jobs elsewhere. And that's what takes you around the country. I suppose it's really no different to a place like the U.S.
No. So your background is on-air radio.
Well, it was many different things, actually, before. With this outrageous accent I had, I think my career opportunities on air were pretty limited in terms of Cap City Radio, but I did enjoy that. Moved into production, copywriting, sales and marketing, and the like. So I've touched on many different areas, but the love, of course, is being on air and playing records and having fun.
Yeah, because you were based in Australia with a Canadian accent. How difficult was it to establish a voiceover career?
Well, it was unique back then. There was a need occasionally for North American voices. This was pre-internet, of course. So, and it was very hard to actually get an American, online to record or something like that. It was just technically difficult to do. So I was very fortunate to pick up the odd, North American thing. And I can remember actually going out and coming back to the agency, and Ron Scott was there, and I said, yeah, but I told him I was from Toronto. And he goes, oh, Jesus, don't tell him you're from Toronto. You'll never get a job. Had to be from America. Yeah. And anyway, so, that's the way it worked out, and managed to fit the bill for a number of years as a token ethnic, which was great. But there were opportunities elsewhere too, but not as many, mostly Australia.
Because you're internationally known now as the voice of Mythbusters. The backstory of Mythbusters is quite interesting, because I remember that being pitched in Australia as an Australian TV production, and no network would touch it.
Interesting, isn't it?
And it was taken to America, where it finally actually got some traction.
But certainly Discovery saw some potential in it and invested in, a three episode pilot series, and off it went from there. I mean, it was perfect for Discovery, of course, and I think it was better. It's ended up at Discovery than.
A lot of people who watch the show wouldn't realise that the post-production, or majority of it, is done in Sydney.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's more of an international show than an Australian show, but there's a massive Australian part of it, of course. The concept is Australian. Post-production is done here. The executive producer used to be here. Now he's in the UK. Writers all over the world. So it really is an international production. But as Adam Savage has said, the Australian element of that, because a lot of the crew that work on the show over in San Francisco are Australian. That Australian sense of humor is certainly permeated through their work, and I think it's given the show, quite a unique edge in the U.S. market, if you like.
Yeah, you can certainly pick the elements of Australia in there, even to some of the hats and the poor impersonations of Australians.
Poor impersonations, period, I think.
Yes, exactly. So how did you get that job? Because that, to anyone listening who's in the voice industry, you'd be going, that's a plum job.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of it, of course. But I had actually started years ago, going back to the 80s, actually trying to actually get a narration voice job from Beyond Productions. They were one of the few people in Sydney, few organizations in Sydney doing documentaries and the like. And I knew if anybody needed something for overseas, it might have been them. Well, of course, I tried a number of times and failed dismally. But eventually, I scored a series there called, I think it was The American Spirit, back in the 80s, which was great. I don't know, it was like 13 episodes or something like that. Anyway, and after that, I started actually doing more narration work for Beyond. And Peter Reese, the executive producer, the original executive producer of Mythbusters, came up to me one day and said, "Look, do you want to have a crack at this? But you can't do it like the way you've been doing stuff. You're going to have to do something a bit different." I said, "Well, give it a crack. See what we can work out." And we worked something out and ended up in Discovery, and off they went. Yeah, off we went from there. But so I was just Johnny on the spot firstly, but it's like due to a lot of work being done for Beyond before that. So they knew I could actually, I guess, tackle the work, if nothing else.
Were you ever concerned that you would just be known as the voice of Mythbusters?
I know what you're alluding to, Andrew. And yeah, certainly you stop. I mean, as you know, voice artists they maintain their anonymity for a reason. They need to be anonymous. They need to actually take on the persona of the clients and the work that they're doing to a large extent. Unless, of course, there are personalities involved in such, which is a different kettle of fish. But generally, voiceovers are meant to be sort of anonymous. But when you step into something like this, which is credited and has enjoyed such great success, yes, you start to actually get associated with the program in a particular style. And you get known for that particular style, but that doesn't mean that you can't do other things as well. But
you are one of the main characters of that show. There's no doubting that. I mean, it's synonymous with Mythbusters. In
this business, in the voiceover business, how many voiceover jobs, and there'd be a few, I'm not saying there aren't, but how many would last over 12 years? So I'm grateful for that, and it's nice to actually make a mark, but to be part of such a great show that's changed people's lives, it's informed and entertained and such for many years. So I'm really pleased to be a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't complain too much, Andrew.
Good. I wouldn't. Okay, Robert. 3 things that have changed your life.
I gave this a bit of thought, and it's quite interesting. I didn't know it at the time, but I'd have to say my father, in terms of actually introducing me to radio, believe it or not, but not in any other way except as a listener. I recall as a 5-year-old in England, actually, he built me a little crystal radio, and he sort of screwed it into the wall beside the bed, and I had a pair of Bakelite headphones, and I used to tune to the biggest AM station signal I could find, which happened to be Radio Caroline or something like that. This is going way back to the early days of pirate radio. And that was just fascinating. I was fascinated with that, and I was grateful for that. And as I grew up, my father kept on getting me bigger radios, better radios or whatever, and ended up with this lovely tube radio in Canada. And I'd listen into the Chicago radio stations, and I'd send off information and get DX cards back from them and such. So it was all good fun. So, that I think is certainly part of my love for audio, radio, the audio media, if you like. And I still enjoy radio, of course, even today, as a listener, as a sometimes contributor, but mostly as a listener. Secondly, I think AWA Radio Network. It was the biggest radio network back in the 70s, had 7 or 8 stations, including 2CH. It had, Cairns, Townsville, Warwick, Queensland, Grafton, Goulburn, et cetera. Bendigo, Launceston. So as a network and joining the AWA radio network at an early age, it gave me an opportunity to actually expand into radio and learn more about radio, which I did at stations like 2AY, 3BO, 7LA. That was all part of growing up in radio, and so the people at the top of the network itself, they really didn't have to do this, but they saw, I guess, someone who's keen, someone had a strange accent, whatever. So they made available opportunities, which I grabbed. So I worked for them for 6-7 years, and so I'm grateful for that. And then a little later on, when I was part of the Radio Marketing Bureau. Actually, even before that, I came across work by Street Remley. He was an American voice working out of Adelaide, but he wasn't just a voice artist. He had a studio, and he'd prepare and write radio campaigns for national advertisers. Some fantastic stuff, too. And I had the pleasure of actually working sort of beside him in a way as the convener of the Agency Writers Workshop when I was at the Radio Marketing Bureau. And Street Remley and a lot of other well-respected producers, as well as agency writers who used to come along and pass on what they knew about writing for radio to young writers in agencies. Did a lot to promote radio as a creative outlet. And it also taught them, about how to develop ideas, creative ideas that are used in commercials and such. And Street was there, and he was just, and there were others, of course, right up there too, but Street in particular was this is the guy who he'd take no crap from anybody, and he'd call a spade a spade. He was very honest, but he was also very generous too, and he did a lot to encourage a lot of good creative over the following, 10, 20 years.
I could never kind of work out why he was in Adelaide. But
very true.
Yeah, because it is a small city, and I would have thought a bigger city would have been better suited, but it seemed to suit him.
I don't think he's quite as active today, but he's still with us. Fantastic.
In a world where only the best voice will do. Realtimecasting.com.
But it's interesting because I've got a distinct feeling we're about the same age. Mm-hmm. I think we're pretty close.
39, 40?
Yep, that's it. Spot on. Well done. Well picked. You could tell, Bakelite,
Bakelite, yes, of course.
That could have been a bit of a giveaway, but
sprung there, didn't I?
Yeah, from crystal sets to doing this via Skype, things have changed quite dramatically in our world.
Have they ever?
Which bits do you think have been good, and which bits do you think have been very bad?
Ooh, well, I'm not, I'm not one to complain generally. You just got to live in the environment that you're in, I guess. In terms of voiceovers, I think it's given clients a lot more opportunities to find and locate in a very sort of organized way a particular voice. And it's given voices a chance to market themselves a lot broader. But, I think really with this larger playing field for voice artists, I guess they pick artists because of one particular style that they have. Now, Andrew, you and I grew up in Australia here, and if you were a voiceover, and I'm going to say myself, but others a voiceover with an agent, you were quite versatile. Or versatile. You did soft sells, you did the retails, you did everything in between, characters as well. You were very versatile. But because of the so many voices now, I think versatility may be of some value, but I think, if you've got a particular style of that disgruntled, senior or that young skateboarder, that's your sound, whatever the sound is, it gives you an opportunity to position yourself a lot better, a lot more specifically. So you can specialize a bit more, given a larger playing field. The downside of that, some of the aggregators have, it's a race to the bottom in many ways in terms of rates and things like that. And I think that does nobody any good. Yes, people are hungry and they need to feed and they need to buy food and things like that. But, you can only drop your pants to your ankles,
Yeah, well, some people think you can go further, but
you said that, Andrew.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because you can almost see that there's been this huge explosion. But now people are getting used to using good voices. They want the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can almost see it imploding, going back to a kernel of professional talent.
I agree with that. I think there's always, there's always the 80-20 rule, and you can apply the 80-20 rule to, to any sort of market. And certainly, there are a core group of very talented people that can get voice work because agencies and other producers and studios and such, because they know they're going to deliver. There's false economy in getting someone in that might be a bit rough around the edges or whatever, that you have to work longer with. They know what they're going to get. You get someone in, here's a script, they read it once and twice maybe, and they figures, and it's done. And they're off and they're out, especially when studios are $300-400 an hour. This is at that top level. I'm talking about the sort of like the commercial level. People that are casting far and wide for a voice that'll do something for $100 or something like that. Well, that's fine, but there'll always be somebody that does that. But that's what the market's about. The idea is to position yourself, to get yourself into a little higher level than that.
Yeah.
At the same time, look, it's hard for me. I don't want to be judgmental on anybody, but I do see offers for voices and for voice work at a pretty low rate, and I figure that's not right. Agencies, well, I don't know. Are they dropping their pants? Maybe. But
I think everybody's got to be a little bit flexible. I mean, if your agent gets a call and they say, look, it's 30 TV spots, then they're going to say, okay, well, we can, cut you a deal here. Of course they're going to cut a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always been the case, too.
Yeah.
But, you're right. You've got to be sensible about it. But look, like I say, it's hard. It's hard, and I don't want to criticize anybody that's trying to make a living out of voice work. It's a hard slog. You could be lucky, and but it's something you really do have to work with for a long time before you get to pop in and do your bit. Unless, of course, you've got something to offer nobody else has. I don't know.
Well, because voices are unique, then everybody has something to offer that's different to anybody else. And that's always been one of the problems where people start to imitate. I mean, when Don LaFontaine passed away, everyone thought, oh, well, I can do a great Don LaFontaine impersonation. I'll get all of his work. And it's like, well, we don't want an impersonator.
In the meantime, the cultural market's moved on too. The Don LaFontaine voice, the big trailer voice, isn't used quite as much these days in trailers. For whatever reasons, it's the voice of the man, and sometimes the man's not cool. Sometimes you got to have something else going on. What I'm saying is that the whatever's in vogue has moved on a bit, and trailer work is fantastic, but I don't think is anywhere near as much as used to go on. Used to happen.
Yeah,
what I can gather.
Well, I was talking to Nick Tate, who was one of the 5 guys in a limo.
5 men in a limo.
Yeah,
classic.
That's a great
hung
video.
like a.
Yes, but he was one of the 5, and he said probably there were 15.
Yeah,
but the top 5 were taking the lion's share of the cash.
That's right,
and they were making a lot of money.
Oh yeah. Well, good on them, and so it shall be. So it should be too. Voice work is very much, it's no different to acting. Just doesn't have the pictures.
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on in audio than I think people sometimes give it credit.
And it's interesting because I was flicking around because there was at a lunch the other week, and someone mentioned Fatal Attraction. I played the trailer for the movie, which is a Don trailer, and then you listen to it and think, you know what? I can hear the value in that. That's a cracker trailer.
I know. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. Yeah.
Where do you see the voice industry going? Now we have all this new technology. More of us are sitting at home doing work.
Well, I think it's going to continue like that for a bit. The market will continue to develop. New players will come in. Old players will drop out. This is perhaps in terms of aggregators and such. There is no doubt an increasing demand for media content, given the spate of stations and specialized stations is going to, people call it fragmentation, it's segmentation, whatever you want to call it. But there's going to be a never-ending demand for content, but it's got to be affordable. And I think that is going to impact. So there's going to be just as much work, but I believe there'll still be downward pressure on prices to some degree, except for, that core, national, international commercial stuff, perhaps. So, I still think there's lots of opportunities. I think that if you're a good seasoned voiceover guy like yourself, Andrew, that can be given a script and deliver on cue like that, you'll always be in demand. Those people will always be in demand because they're not time wasters, and that comes with experience. It's not something you can actually have straight from the beginning unless you're, like Superman. But I don't think it's as bleak I think perhaps if you're after the top end stuff, I think there's going to always be pressure on that. But I believe that talented voiceovers will rely less and less on direct work to commercial studios, like rolling into commercials. More and more stuff will be done remotely.
Yeah.
So while that's not necessarily, that's a good thing because it expands everybody's market.
Yeah, well, I saw some stats only recently, and they indicated that in North America, the entertainment industry would over double in the next 3 to 5 years.
That doesn't surprise me at all, when you consider it.
So based on that, if you say that, voiceover is, I think the current stat is 1.22% of the whole entertainment industry in America.
Is that right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So all of a sudden, that 1.22% becomes, 2.44% in real terms.
Yeah, so it's not all doom and gloom, but I think as long as new players come into the market with a better deal for talent and a better way to work, then yes, there's opportunities for voice artists. But again, you gotta have some talent to begin with.
Yeah.
Just because, your uncle told you at Christmas that you had a great voice for radio doesn't mean, or whatever is not quite enough. You got to put in the hard slog, got to do the work.
That's always the line, is it? My nephew's got a great voice, he should be doing voiceovers. It's like, well, the guy down the road's got very long fingers. Maybe he should be a concert pianist.
Well, I do remember actually being in England in 1972, and my cousin got a cassette recorder. So we all recorded something on this cassette, and I went as low as I could at like 14, 15 or something. My Uncle Ron, who had a really deep voice, did it too. And on playback, my voice was deeper, and I thought, hey, I got a career here. So, anyway, that was just as an aside.
How do you find working from home?
To tell you the truth, I much prefer to work in a commercial studio, generally. I mean, I've done it for 35, 40 years or whatever it is, 30 odd years. Working at home, it's good if you've got your gear sorted and such, but you're always got an eye on levels and, there's distractions. While in a studio, you can focus solely on the read. And you have some great guys there that say, listen, can I get a little more in the cans, please? They'll do it. You don't have to worry about any of the technical things or anything like that. You can just focus on the job at hand. So that's a real benefit, I think, to working in a studio, like a commercial studio, to working at home. But at the same time, working at home is good too, because, you can do it at your convenience. Sadly, though, a lot of the work I do from home is for overseas, which means I'm either working at 12 midnight or 5:30 a.m. or something like that. That's the downside, but the upside is, you're getting the work that you wouldn't normally get. So
yeah. So the majority of your work is overseas?
I would say so now, yes. I certainly still roll into studios in Australia, of course, as you would know. It's mostly for America from home.
This is not Mythbusters. We're talking about other clients in America. Yeah.
Mythbusters is always done in Beyond Studios in Artarmon. Yeah. I occasionally suggest I could do pickups from home, but the audio operator there, the audio manager there is you got to come in. And that's good. I'm pleased.
Yeah. Absolutely. So do you have guys overseas directing you when you're doing voiceovers from home?
Absolutely. I do a Skype connection. That means they can hear me through the mic. I can hear them through my headphones. I'm only recording my end of the conversation, of course, here. And then I send it off there. I don't have ISDN, actually, or any of those, and that's something I'm looking at, but I don't at the moment. In fact, if the job's big enough, I've actually gone into a studio and said, listen, we'll use your commercial studio, and said, I need to ISDN to here. And, and paid for it myself. So, no. But if you're turning over stuff like doing promos for ESPN or things like that, they you know what it's like in stations, man. They got to churn through it quick. And
the voice for the voices. This is the VO Radio Show.
Are you signing up for another series of Mythbusters?
Well, I'm recording another series at the moment. That's pretty much all I can say. It's great. They're still going, and it's nice. It's great to be a part of it. But it's now coming into 12, 13 years, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
13 years, so wonderful. So that's pretty much all I can say,
Yep. So what sort of voiceovers do you love doing?
I do. I don't know. I mean, anything I can do competently, Andrew.
Yeah.
I love them. I like stuff, a little character stuff. I can do a few character stuff, which is good fun. I also I do like conversational commercials.
Yep.
Just speaking, normally, I guess.
Yeah. What about animation? Have you ever considered doing?
Yeah, I'd love to do animation. And I was just saying the other day to a mate that, maybe I should go to Japan. He said, they'll never let you in, firstly, but, it'd be nice to do some animation work there. I almost did here in Australia, but the production was lost to Vancouver, so didn't quite get that. But yeah, no, that is an area that I think is nice. It's like hard work, though. There's a lot of work involved, and voices that are used in animation, are generally expected to do at least 2 or 3 different voices for the show or for a number of shows, whatever. So it's quite challenging, in a talent sense.
Yeah. It was interesting talking with Nick Tate because Nick Tate's father, John, was one of the voices on the Thunderbirds.
Right. Is that right?
In fact, more than one. He did quite a few voices
on
the
Thunderbirds.
Well, there you
go.
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. FAB, Scott. Yeah.
Thunderbirds are go.
Yeah, but there were a lot of Australians involved in that series as well.
Uh-huh. And there was another one involved. Daniel Spence's father was involved in Fireball XL5.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he sung the closing lyric,
Yep.
about skipping across the universe or something like that. That was fantastic.
For those who don't know, that's Russell Crowe's father-in-law. Yeah, but there was Barry Humphries, who, who's Dame Edna. He was also involved in Fireball XL5.
Is that right?
So how do you feel, like, as someone living in Australia, Australian father, English mother, Canadian accent.
North American accent.
North American accent, not Canadian. So what do you class your accent?
About there on the prairie, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, sorry, Andrew, there was a question there?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, what do you class your accent?
I call it North American. It's not regional in any particular sense. Long form stuff, you might be able to pick up a Canadianism or so, or even an Australianism, frankly. But generally, I'd say it's, North American. It's not very, if somebody said they wanted somebody from Boston, then, I'd say, get somebody else, please.
Yeah.
I was initially positioned by Ron Scott as the LA West Coast sound for one reason or another. But generally, generic North American.
What do the Americans hear when they hear your voice?
I have no idea, man. Sometimes they can say, well, he's not from around here. But the thing is, there are some people that actually complain about some of the pronunciations in the show. But the bottom line is that the meaning is there. They still understand it. It's not like I'm not like I'm speaking a different language. But I can't please everyone.
It's the same with Australian accents. Mad Max was dubbed with the first film with American actors. But now Australian accent is heard everywhere through America.
That's true. Doesn't make it any more desirable, but, it'll get you a free drink.
Yeah. But it's actually funny, though, because on television, you can hear an Australian and no one would complain about it. In fact, Australian characters in various TV shows in America.
Yeah, I think it's that Australian... there's a certain larrikinism, I guess, or the feeling or position, I guess, that comes with an Australian voice in an American show or movie or whatever, and that's a good thing. And there certainly is an Aussie invasion in America, has been for a number of years, which is just great and wonderful.
I love it. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Do you see Not something I can do, though? Not really. The only line I like saying is, I'm as dry as a dead dingo's donga. And I only ever do that once. So no, I'm absolutely no good at it. However, I actually did know this Canadian that spent 5 years on a sheep station outside Darwin, and he was speaking like an hawker, like you wouldn't believe. So it really has something to do with environment.
I think it's got a lot to do with the environment.
Yeah.
In a world where only the best voice will do. Realtimecasting.com.
How do you see your career playing out over the next 5-10 years?
Oh, gee, Andrew, who knows? It's such a hard thing to plan for, if you like, in this game. But I would hope that I'd still be able to do some long form stuff in the future. Beyond, what I'm doing at the moment. That's basically it. And as you you can go out and try to find opportunities, but you do have to to keep your eyes out for those opportunities and keep plugging away. But so no idea. Having said that, animation work is something that I would like to delve into a bit more, do a bit more research on, and find out what's going on. But pretty much that's it. The industry, as you know, moves on, and they're younger, hungrier, more talented people about, and the sounds. Literally the sounds of commercials and stuff, and on radio and TV everywhere, not just here in Australia, changes over time, and ever it was, ever it shall be. But when you think back of the 30-odd, 40-odd years that I've been involved in this, I thank my lucky stars. It's been wonderful to be a part of it. I'm not saying it's over yet, but I'm grateful for what I've had.
Yeah, but I see some major changes happening with the industry. You can almost see that a lot of production will be done from home. There's also talk that a lot of representative agents will close their expensive offices and start working more as from a home office.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really, thinking about that. When you consider, they've got a studio there with a half a dozen mics, maybe a couple of booths, and an audio operator as well as part of an agent's work.
Yep.
If you're getting union prices, I guess maybe it might be worth it. But generally, yeah, you're right. There are ways to save money there, I'd say.
It's unbelievable.
It's crazy, though, isn't it? It's just a funny thing going to your agents to do a demo.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And, of course, the difference is here in Australia, there are audition rates because, it may get abused, this doing auditions for free in America. I've certainly seen some cases where I thought they were just actually fishing around to see what sounded better creatively rather than actually saying we want this voice or that voice.
Yeah.
It was basically to help them pitch to the client more so than to actually engage particular talent. While here, of course, having to pay for it, you've got to give it some thought and you've got to give it your best guess, that's the producer.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing. So,
Well, it's interesting because there's two tiers to that, and there's discussions at the moment where we have, in Australia, we call it the submission fee.
Yes.
So you turn up at a studio and you read for the client, and you read for an hour if necessary until they're happy with your demo.
Yep.
Or there's the other side of things, which is the home studio. And no one's actually thought about how they're going to handle that, because you're not going to be able to charge, a submission fee if you're doing it from home, because no one's going to pay for that. But the problem is...
Okay, so you're saying the pressure's on to actually do away with the system we have at the moment?
No, I think keep it. But I also think there should be two tiers. If you're a home studio talent and you're happy to audition from home, you still should get paid for it. Mm-hmm. But it should be a smaller fee.
Okay.
It does two things. One, it actually, gives you an income for turning on your gear and reading something. Two, it also stops that sort of like tsunami of auditions coming in via the internet when you've got 1,000 people auditioning for it because they do it for free.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, when people audition for free, they actually perceive they're in the industry, even though they've never actually booked a job.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, the difference in America, though, is that, yes, you're auditioning for jobs, but if they're union jobs, for example, the remuneration, if you're selected, is much greater.
Yeah.
So, what you lose on the front end, you gain on the back end, so to speak, as long as that continues, if you like, that's fine. But you're right. Some of these pay-to-play places, if you like, going back a few years, by the time I actually got the email and got in the studio and gear and kicked over the gear and got it all organized, I noticed 200 people had already auditioned for the job.
Yeah.
And, no client in the right mind is going to go through 200 tapes or 200 auditions. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah. And it's sort of like, that's when I gave it up.
Yeah.
And of course, I think, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance too are paying a little more attention to this sort of thing. And they're trying to actually, anticipate what the market's going to be like in the future. And, I think there's a long-term strategy there with them, which is great. That if you're a member of the union, there's somebody looking out for you.
Yeah.
Whatever, however best they can, given the environment.
Yeah, and I think also it's also up to the actor. Instead of sitting there waiting for the union to do something, you've also got to put pressure on the union to do things that you believe or at least table what you feel is the answer. And
yeah, absolutely right. Yes, you have to have. They can only do so much. It's got to be industry led to a large extent, and that's where agents come in to a great extent, and I think that's good. And that then plays out towards the to the union as well. And when the brown stuff hits the air extractor. For members anyway, the union's pretty good mob to have on side. Yeah. I'm a union member, have been for many a year, and I'll continue to be.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful though. If they wait for the brown stuff to hit the air extractor, they've probably left it just a bit too late.
Oh, true. I mean, look, they're not perfect, and it's only a small segment of their business. You're right. I have no delusions about that, but I still believe it's important that all voice artists should endeavor wherever possible to support their industry through the union.
Now, that's a fine note to wind this up. So we all move forward as one to conquer the world.
What about the workers?
Yeah, exactly. What about the workers, mate?
Anyway, yeah, Andrew, thank you for this, mate.
Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure. And it's great to have you with us. And all the best. See you in the street.
Absolutely. See you in the street or a drink somewhere.
Oh, now you're talking.
All the best, Andrew. Take care.
Cheers.
The voice for the voices. This is the VO Radio Show.
All right, that's Robert Lee. That was our special guest this week. And now you know the man behind the Voice of Mythbusters.
Very talented guy, isn't he?
He's a great guy too.
Yeah,
really
he
nice
is a nice guy. Yeah, very much so.
Next week, we've got another really nice guy, a guy called Harland Hogan. People around the world would know him for his other business called Voiceover Essentials, with his flagship piece of kit, the Portabooth and Portabooth Pro.
Yeah, can't think of many voiceover artists I know that don't have one of those.
It's true. He's sold a lot of them, and we'll talk about that next week. But he's also a really, really well-accomplished actor and voice actor. So Harland Hogan is our guest next week on the VO Radio Show. We'll see you next week for another packed episode of the VO Radio Show.
I'll be here.
I'll be here too.
The VO Radio Show is produced in the studios of Voodoo Sound. To polish your next audio production, check us out at voodoo-sound.com. Find professional voices simply all in one place. Realtimecasting.com, including me.